Hola, hola, YouTube. I'm wearing my ball hockey hoodie. That means it's comics time. I picked up my April comics last weekend. Yeah, I think it was just last weekend. And I flew through them pretty quickly. A lot of good issues. And I was able to stay awake through them all. I'm having a little easier time staying awake lately, which is weird because I've only gotten older. But, hey, maybe it was just a phase I was going through where I couldn't stay awake through any movie, TV show, video game, comic book. Awful. So many things I had to reread or rewatch. It made me angry quite a bit of the time. But anyways, this time, no problems getting through the comics. And the first one up is issue 7 of Void Rivals. This one starts with a bit of a flashback from about 10 years before the events of this series, where it kind of picked up in the beginning, where Derek, he was, it showed him some sort of industrial accident or something there. He was running almost like the load lifter suits in Aliens. He was running some sort of contraption like that to transfer cargo on the surface of a planet, and some sort of accident happened and he lost his grip and he kind of ejected from the suit and got flung through space, and they weren't able to retrieve him, and he ended up coming down in a place called the Wasteland. Now, flash forward to current times, and in the last issues, Derek and Salila, the Agorian and Zertonian, who are at odds, as we know these people, fled their captivity, and the only choice they think they had to evade capture was to head to this wasteland. Now, Derek assures Salila that I've been here before, it's going to be fine. And she's like, I don't believe you. And nobody who goes to this place ever comes back alive, sort of thing. So they set off on their journey to the wasteland. And in the meantime, we see the Zertonian leader pissed off about the fact that they escaped and kind of baffled that they're heading to the wasteland, but not taking it for granted that they're going to just perish in the wasteland. So he reactivates some sort of weird Zertonian who looks half biological, half cyborg sort of thing, activates him from some sort of stasis pod and says, I'm taking a big risk here with, reactivating you. I guess this guy's kind of a fiend, and he wants to send this guy after the pair. And this guy's name, this bounty hunter, whatever you want to call him, mercenary scumbag, his name is Proximus. So he is activated to go and retrieve them. At the end of the issue, we see some sort of leader, some sort of mysterious figure kind of make a call that's saying Salila is finally on the path of her destiny and it's about to begin, sort of thing. So we don't know what's in store, but there's kind of, it's almost like there's plans being laid that kind of set this course about. So we're just not privy to what those exact plans are and how they're going to go until the rest of this story plays out. So issue 8, hopefully coming next month if it's not sold out, because I thought I saw that it was released in early April, but it wasn't in my bag at the comic book shop. So I hope that it just hadn't been released yet and they didn't forget to put it in, because if they did that, then they may not have the issue next month when I go in. So fingers crossed. Second up are the Ninja Turtles. Only 2 issues this month. One of them being from the Saturday Morning Adventures series, which takes kind of the theme of the original 1987 cartoon. And it wasn't one of the regular issues in the series. It was actually called the April Special. And of course, April O'Neil is on the cover. Yucca yuck. So there's actually 2 stories in this book. The first one being a little bit longer. There's all these dimensional wormholes opening up, and it seems to be a lot of dinosaurs coming through these portals and wreaking havoc over New York City and all over the world and such. And April O'Neil is interviewing Dr. McGuffin from TCRI, and he's like, oh, the wormholes or the dimensional anomalies have shown that they're burning out faster and faster, so eventually they'll all just cease happening. In the meantime, we just have to put up with all this nonsense, sort of thing. So April is like, okay, whatever. And then eventually, though, she is actually sucked through one of these dimensional anomalies, and she ends up in this strange universe that's not on Earth, but it's almost like an Indiana Jones type adventure. She's kind of outside of this temple, and runs into all these traps and has to escape. And she runs into this mutant named Ace Duck, who we've seen in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon. And he is invading this temple, trying to find this magical relic that he's going to use to try and get his father back, who I think went missing or something. And April's like, okay, lead the way, like, because suddenly there's 3 geese, 3 mutant geese start chasing them. And she's like, I have no choice but to go with you, you know, whatever, since we don't want to get shot by these geese. And the geese are really cool. They remind me of the Nazis from the Indiana Jones series, especially the first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Remember there was the one guy that was kind of the weird guy with the glasses, and he's the one whose face melts off at the end of the movie when they open the Ark of the Covenant. It was like this guy was their leader, but in goose form, and then he had a couple of just regular goose soldiers with him, and very much reminded me of the Indiana Jones Nazis. Anyways, they're chasing Ace and April, and they have to just get into this temple and try and get this relic before the geese do, while also not being killed by the geese. And in the end, they do find the relic, which can only be used one time, and it actually opens dimensional portals. And so Ace is like, April, you use it to get back home to wherever you are. And April's like, but your dad, you never find him if I use it, and blah blah blah. And he's like, that's fine, whatever. And so in the end, she gets home, only to find the turtles in the meantime have been trying to open dimensional anomalies to try and find April, and have since got themselves into a little bit of a pickle at home. And that's how things end off, as April communicates with them, and they're like, we're a little busy right now. So always trouble with those dimensional anomalies, right? God, for the number of times I've run into that trouble. Next up, issue 149 of the regular Turtles series. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you about the second story in that book. The Turtles chase down some sort of like a mobster crime cartel looking guy with a suit and stuff, and they're like, tell us who you work for and whatever's going on. And he's like reluctant at first, but eventually they get some information out of him. And as they're kind of questioning this guy, Mona Lisa shows up, one of their old friends, and they're like, Mona Lisa, and she's like filling them in on some of her adventures of where she's been. And then they all go hunting for this guy's boss in the end, and they end up dropping in on their operation. But the crime boss, mob boss guy, has some sort of futuristic tech suit that he wears, and gives the Turtles a real run for the money. But in the end, of course, they take him down, and that's the end of the story. So a couple of simple stories there. But back to issue 149 of the Turtles, coming up on 150. I think 150 is going to be a big issue, so next month's story should be a good one. In this one, Leo is fighting the Bad Bob, and Leo is struggling, and Koya swoops in and rescues him and brings Leo back to April and Mikey, and no, not Donnie. Who else is there? I think that's it. And the Bad Bob chases them down and is like, you guys don't know what you're doing. I had to strike this deal, and I'll show you a little sample of Armagon's power. And he's got this weird red crystal thing in his chest, and he uses the power from it to suck it's not DNA, it's quantonucleic acid or something like that, to suck it out of little Lita, the mutant turtle, or whatever. Is she a turtle? I can't remember what she is. But anyway, one of their little tiny girls that trains with them and stuff. And he sucks her Q&A out of her, which turns her back into some sort of like albino child sort of thing. And she's so upset, and Leo's upset because he let it happen. So they're trying to recover from this shock that the Bad Bob gave to them. But in the meantime, the dimensional wormhole that April and Leo have trying to keep open so that Donnie and Venus and those guys can get back starts shrinking. So they have to really rush to get it open back up again and stabilize it, which they do. But Bad Bob, I think, goes through the portal, not yet. On the other side of the portal, Donnie, Venus, and the Good Bob are with future Jenica, and they're being chased by the authorities at the time, and they end up escaping and going to Michelangelo's house. So Michelangelo from the future, and he's so excited to see them, and he's like kind of playing things down and asking them if they can hang out and shoot a video and whatever. And they're like, Mikey, like, Armagon is real. It's a real threat. We're being chased by people that are trying to kill us. Like, you can't be so lackadaisical about just wanting us to chill with you, right? Like, we need to get move on this. So he's like, I'm sorry, I just miss you guys and whatever. And so while all that's going on, the Bad Bob shows up through the dimensional wormhole, and also Armagon shows up outside of Mikey's apartment building or wherever he lives, and he's poised to strike. And the Bad Bob starts fighting the Good Bob, and Donnie and Venus and those guys try to escape, but the Bobs end up having a fight. And I believe what happens at the end is Bad Bob throws Good Bob into Armagon, and he's like, wait, you'll see how you come out on the other side. You're going to be human again, sort of thing. And that's how the issue ends off. So I like the storyline, but I really find the different portal, like the different, it's kind of like the multiverse and time travel again. You know how I feel about these. If it's done properly, I like it, but it can't be overused, which is what Marvel and DC have started to do with all their movies. Marvel more so. So sometimes I get a little confused on it, exactly what's happening, right? And linking up the different things that are going on. But they've done it all right in this Turtle series. And Armagon, whatever the hell it is such a cool presence, because it's just this big malevolent shark that can travel through time and space and suck the Q&A out of you, apparently. So it's a really cool enemy, and I think in 150, I have a feeling with where the story's got to in 149, I have a feeling that in issue 150 it's going to be a big issue, and it's going to bring this current storyline to a close. The whole Armagon thing, I think, is going to be over in 150. I could be wrong, but that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from how things have gone up to this point, and how they're advertising how the kind of the road to 150 sort of thing. So obviously something big's going to happen in 150, and I find it, I feel like it's going to be the end of this storyline. There could be some casualties, there could be some changes, who knows, but either way, I think it's going to be done. So, but I have been known to be wrong from time to time. Sadly, this month there's only one lonely issue of Transformers. It hurts my heart. It hurts my heart. Issue number 6 of the new series from Image. And it's a really cool issue. Lots of action, pretty much all action from front to back. If you remember from last issue, the Devastator showed up on the scene right as the issue ended. So Devastator starts wreaking havoc on the Autobots. They all decide to fall back to the Ark to try and get shelter and regroup before they decide what they're going to do about this monster. And as they do so, Prime is kind of, Optimus is the last one into the Ark, and Devastator's just able to get his hands on him, and he gives Prime a really good beating. And the Autobots are able to recover his body and drag him into the Ark, but he's on his last legs. And so he basically ejects the Matrix of leadership and says, one of you has to take this and lead the charge from now on. I can feel my spark fading. This is it, sort of thing. Sparky, so Spike's dad, is like, no, you can't let this happen. You're the only hope for this world of repelling these idiots, right? So he has an idea of him to basically walk into the Matrix of leadership and repower it or something. Anyways, he does so and sacrifices himself in the process. And once the Matrix goes back into Prime with this newfound energy or whatever Sparky did to it, it brings Prime back to full power, and he begins to take the fight back to the Decepticons. He even beats Devastator with Devastator's own digits, which he tears off of Devastator's hands. So that was pretty good. And he also lands one hell of a drop kick right under his chin. So WWE bound Optimus Prime. Anyways, in the meantime, while this is going on, Cliffjumper with Carly inside of him have been racing back to the scene of this battle. They were kind of out doing something, whatever they were doing last issue, I can't remember. And they rush back to the scene, and they kind of witness Starscream being Starscream. So they try to take the fight to Starscream, and Cliffjumper gets the jump on him, and literally, and gets a leg up on him, and is able to like have a blaster right at his head and like be able to finish it once and for all. And he's like, I can't do it. And Carly's like, what? He killed, my dad and a couple of your friends and whatever. He's like, I just can't do it. And then Starscream, of course, flips the script, and he's about to kill Cliffjumper eventually. But then Carly scrambles and is able to find a big blaster, an Autobot blaster, and kind of prop it up on some wreckage, and eventually blast Starscream and kind of end that threat. So Starscream is ejected back outside of the Ark, where Prime is taking the fight to Devastator, and they all get tied up in the same fight. And eventually Prime is able to, with the help of the rest of the Autobots, drive the Decepticons away from the Ark and force them into a retreat. And right at the end of the issue, we see Spike wake up in the hospital from his injuries after he got shot a few issues ago maybe. And he can't speak. He's got machines on him and stuff like that, but he writes on a piece of paper, "Where's my dad?" Oh, he's got a gut punch coming, right? Last up is G.I. Joe, and this is where we get the most amount of action this month, and there's nothing bad about that, because good God, G.I. Joe is awesome. That's why I save it for last every time. Next up, issue 4 of the Duke sub-series. If you remember, Duke and Clutch had been taken to the decommissioned pit as captives after Duke kind of went rogue after everything that went on in the first couple issues. And Baroness was also being kept prisoner in the cells of the pit, with Stalker and Rock and Roll, the ones that brought him in, kind of keeping guard. Well, excuse me. But Cobra is after them, and is after Baroness especially, and wants to off Duke as well for what he knows. And so they're attacking the pit. So it's a whole team of Cobra troops and vehicles against 2 Joes that are out of captivity, plus 2 Joes that are in captivity, and a Cobra in captivity. So they eventually, of course, let them free, and Duke comes to some sort of understanding temporarily with the Baroness. So they're all kind of fighting for their lives. Now, they can't go up because the only way out of the pit is up, but that's where Cobra is. So they decide to go down. When they get down to the basement of the pit, they find all these vehicles just sitting in the hangar, not weaponized. They've all been stripped of weapons and stuff, but they are still functional. So they come up with the idea to, well, we'll each get in one of these vehicles and blast the hell out of here, right? So they get in an APC. I think Stalker and Rock and Roll are in an APC. Duke goes in the Sky Striker jet, and Baroness must go in the tank. And so eventually they blast out of the pit and take the fight to Cobra. And Cobra's all pissed off that they're getting dummied by, 5 people in 3 vehicles sort of thing. And eventually Duke blasts off in the Sky Striker away from the skirmish, instead of turning himself in and taking it on the chin like the Rock and Roll and Stalker have tried to convince him to, right? He's like, no, I got to see this through. So his destination is Scotland, to invade Destro's weapon facility, Mars, right? Or is it in Scotland? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I can't remember if it is or not. But anyways, that's where Duke is headed, because that's where, when the whole weapons thing, when he saw Starscream the jet, they all linked it, Dr. Burkhardt or whatever linked it back to Mars. So Duke thinks it's Destro that's behind all this, but really it's Transformers. It's nothing even close. But either way, he's going to Destro because that's who he thinks has done these egregious crimes. And he gets shot down by Scrap Iron on the way in, but survives, and eventually infiltrates Destro's base and finds a bunch of tech and vehicles and stuff like that. And so he's further convinced that it is Destro still behind all this. But eventually he is intercepted by a Cobra Bat, who kind of grabs him by the neck with its big claw attachment thing, and kind of holds him up in the air like, you're fucking done, bitch, right? And that's the way the issue ends. So Duke, once again, got himself into a little bit of a pickle. How many pickles has he been in already in just 4 issues of this sub-series, right? He's got to be exhausted. Next up, issues 2 and 3 of the Cobra Commander subseries. And the Cobra Commander subseries is one I was really looking forward to because he is such an awesome, weird character. And what made these 2 issues even better specifically is that the Dreadnoks are heavily involved. And if you don't know the Dreadnoks, just a little teaser for some other video I might have soon. You may get to know the Dreadnoks a little bit in the near future. But anyways, the Dreadnoks are like a sect of ne'er-do-well Florida swamp dwellers that are loosely linked with Cobra simply because they're evil and Cobra's evil, so they sometimes work together. And they're led by Zartan, who is a bit of a shapeshifter. He can take on, he can change his face and his appearance to simulate other people, and of course that comes in handy when you want to spy or subterfuge, you know, that sort of thing. So the Dreadnoks are awesome characters. They're such a fun part of G.I. Joe. So, and like I said, they're heavily involved in these 2 issues. So over these 2 issues, we see 2 of the Dreadnoks, Ripper and Buzzer, torturing a couple guys that have cut through their swamp running guns or something like that, and they're like, nobody cuts through our swamp running weapons. So they're basically torture them. They kill one guy, and then they say they'll take it easy on the other guy if he gives them the information. So the guy gives them the information, and he's like, and they're like, okay, let's go kill this guy. And he's like, you said you wouldn't kill me. And they're like, no, we said we just take it easy on you. So what they do is they chain this guy up behind their vehicle called the Thunder Machine, which is fucking awesome, and basically run the Thunder Machine through the swamp at full speed with this guy dragging behind it on a chain. And of course he dies. So in the meantime, though, while they're out doing that, Cobra Commander is in the Florida Everglades going on a croc tour, or a gator tour, I guess, and with his handler, some big kind of muscly guy, and they're after something. What they're after is Energon. So again, we're seeing some Transformers links between, you know, Transformers and G.I. Joe here, just like we are in the Duke series. So they've traced it to the Everglades, and Cobra Commander wanders into the Everglades, kind of loses his handler, and ends up running across the Dreadnoks. Ripper and Buzzer try to take him down, but Cobra Commander ends up escaping, and he goes past the Dreadnoks encampment and into a wild part of the Everglades where the Dreadnoks just don't go. So Zarana, one of the, I think the lone Dreadnok female, shows up and is like, guys, what are you doing? You can't go into that part of the swamps. And they're like, well, this guy showed up at our camp and was going through all our stuff. And it's like, well, he's fucked anyways. Leave it alone. We got to go have a meeting or something like that. So in the meantime, Cobra Commander, as he gets into the Everglades, ends up being sucked under the water and is attacked by gators. And that's kind of how the 2nd issue ends. In the 3rd issue, we see the Dreadnoks gather at a local bar, and Zorana calls for attention, and they're discussing what they're going to do. In the meantime, not long after they get into this, Zorana's brother Xandar, another Dreadnok, waltzes in the door with Cobra Commander in tow, and he's captured him. And they're like, here's the guy that was, you know, fucking around with our base or whatever. So they end up taking him back to their headquarters in the swamp, and they torture him and all sorts of stuff. And they're trying to find out who he's working for, what he's after, blah, blah, blah. But eventually Cobra Commander's, his handler or whatever, catches up and takes on the Dreadnoks, and they go after him. Even Torch is there. He was one of the ones torturing Cobra Commander. Torch is my favorite Dreadnok. And so there's a whole bunch of Dreadnoks there. And this guy, Cobra Commander's ally, comes in and he starts fighting them all. And they, like, Buzzer goes at him with his chainsaw, rips half of his face off, and underneath is this yellow eye and something. And they're like, whoa, what the fuck is this? So then all of a sudden this guy, like, breaks his costume, and he's like this weird, thick, winged creature that's kind of half human, half gargoyle or something. And they're like, uh-oh. And then all we see kind of as this portion of the issue ends is kind of Cobra Commander standing there with all these like boom, smash, slash, going on as this guy is basically ripping apart the Dreadnoks. I hope they don't die because I fucking love the Dreadnoks, but it's not looking good for Zartan's troops anyways. And the other thing we see right at the end of the issue is at the end of, must have been the first issue because it wasn't the second, we saw Zartan show up at Castle Destro with some sort of a peace offering or bargain or deal or something like that. And so right at the end of the issue, we see Zartan. Is that this one or is that the other one? Am I getting my storylines confused again? No, never mind. That's part of the regular one. Yeah, so that's how we see this one end off. We haven't seen Zartan in the Cobra Commander series yet. So yeah, so that's the way it ends with that weird dude slashing apart all the Dreadnoks. No Zartan in this one. So what I'm getting confused about is the regular ongoing series, issue 305. In this one, it picks up right after the action from 304 when Serpentor Khan and Dr. Mindbender, who are still on Cobra Island, all mutated after the mutant bomb went off. They sent some spies to Springfield to spy on Cobra Commander and whatever he's up to. So they were able to eavesdrop on Cobra Commander's speech inside the Springfield auditorium that said, we're not just going to sit here and wait for Serpentor and his mutant forces to come attack us. We're going to mobilize and strike at them in certain regions while the iron is hot, blah, blah, blah. So we saw the 3 agents that Serpentor Khan sent engage with Don Moreno, who is a G.I. Joe operative who has parents that live in Springfield and are Cobra loyal, even though they're really not. She was the one that engaged these 3 infiltrators on the roof, and they eventually self-destructed. So when this one picks up, it's right after that happened, and Cobra Commander is on the roof of the Springfield auditorium with a Techno Viper and some other troops, and they're trying to analyze what happened. And Cobra Commander figures out that it was Cobra Khan's troops that have been modified with Revanch's technology that had been eavesdropping on them, so they know what they've been up to, and they obviously had a self-destruct or something like that. But they also surmise that there may have been somebody taking them on in order to get them to self-destruct. So the only person they can think of is possibly Don Moreno, who has ties to Springfield. So a Crimson Guard guardsman is dispatched to Don's parents' house to be like, and it's actually their neighbor, and it's like, guys, if you're hiding Don here, you have to give her up. Like, there's shit going down, whatever. And her parents end up knocking this guy out, and they're like, she's like, what are you gonna do? Like, you just knocked out your neighbor who's with Cobra. Like, your guys are gonna get in trouble for this. And they're like, yeah, well, we can't kill him, he's our neighbor. We'll just tie him up and keep him here while you get the hell out of here. So just go, we'll be fine, sort of thing. We'll leave in the morning after you're gone. So that happens, and Don in the meantime also reports back to G.I. Joe headquarters about what is going on. So the Joes are kind of filled in on that Cobra is going to be attacked by Serpentor's forces from Cobra Island, and so they're made aware of that situation. But in the meantime, they've had their own thing going on. If you remember, Cobra has troops stationed at the ground level of the pit trying to find a way into the pit, and they've been kind of searching around. They can't find the entrance, but eventually they kind of stumble upon where the entrance is in one of the barracks huts underneath a rug that's on the ground. They eventually find the entrance. So Spirit, Lady J, and Molto are dispatched within the pit to keep tabs on this, and eventually when they are able to breach, to just basically deal with them, sort of thing. So when Cobra does find the entrance, they deal with them, let's just say that. So that threat is kind of neutralized. In the meantime, on Cobra Island, Serpentor Khan and Dr. Mindbender have been made aware of everything that's going on, and Serpentor actually seems really happy. He's like, things are going exactly according to plan. And the last thing we see, this is the Destro sequence. At the end of the last issue, we saw Zartan show up at Castle Destro with some sort of peace offering or deal or whatever, right? So right at the end of this issue, we see Zartan dining with Destro and Baroness and saying, here's cheers to a new alliance, sort of thing. But Serpentor Khan and Dr. Mindbender have a conversation saying, oh, we're so happy that Destro has fallen for the Zartan simulacrum that we sent to him. So it's not the real Zartan. And Dr. Mindbender is like, well, what if the real Zartan resurfaces at any point? That could blow our cover. And they're like, well, we have that problem pretty much under wraps right now. It's no problem. So the last thing we see is Zartan on one of their little weird jet ski vehicles, which were so cool, zipping through the swamp on it, and he's got a couple of missiles right over his shoulder coming to blow him up, sort of thing. So the real Zartan may be in a bit of trouble, but there's one thing I've learned. Zartan's hard to kill. All these snakes are hard to kill. All Cobra's hard to kill. So I'm betting on Zartan in this one, and I'm betting on Zartan surviving and throwing a bit of a monkey wrench into Cobra Commander and Serpentor Khan's plans. Funny enough, there's actually a Dreadnok named Monkey Wrench. What do you know?
Meow.